Hello, everybody. My name is Craig LaBan, and I am the restaurant critic with the Philadelphia Inquirer. And I'm here today with three special guests to talk about some of my favorite flavors from the summer this year eating down the shore. Yes, I know summer's almost over. Sad. But one of the best parts of about these guests is that they're restaurants. El Pueblo Taquerias in Cape May and the Sweet Amalia Oyster Market and Kitchen in Newfield are not really seasonal restaurants at all. You can visit them nearly all year round. And we're also going to be talking about a couple larger subjects. The rise of genuine Mexican cooking at the Jersey Shore over the past 10 years, and the fairly recent revival of New Jersey's historic oyster industry. So we have a lot of delicious details to cover. But first, before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items so the audience, you, knows how to participate in today's event. At any time during the discussion, you'll have the opportunity to submit your questions for our special guests. To do so, please ask your questions in the comment section at the bottom of this page. If you're watching from social media, please visit inquirer.com/down the shore to submit your questions. So, without further ado, let's get to the introductions. First, oyster farmer Lisa Calvo and chef Melissa McGrath will be joining us a little bit later in this conversation to talk about their collaboration at the Sweet Amalia Oyster Market and Kitchen. But we're going to start off today by chatting with Ruben Nuñez of El Pueblo Taqueria. The original El Pueblo is in North Cape May, and Ruben just opened a boardwalk satellite taqueria, El Pueblo Dos, on Cape May's famous promenade this summer. It was one of the best restaurants I got a chance to eat at this summer. So welcome, Ruben. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Craig. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad you made it here. Tell us a little bit about your family's restaurants. When did you open the original El Pueblo? And I'm wondering if it was a little bit of a different kind of Mexican restaurant than people had seen up to that point at the Jersey Shore.
Yeah, I know we opened 5 years ago, and it was a little rough at the beginning because we try to keep it a little more traditional. We had a couple people call them the crazy meats that a lot of people aren't used to seeing here, like the lengua, which is the beef tongue, the campechanos, which is like steak, chorizo, and little pieces of pork skin in it.
Chicharrones, you're making me hungry, Ruben.
Yeah, so even red mole rojo, salsa verde, a lot of people weren't really used to it. But little by little, me just being there cooking every single day, I could introduce people and let them, hey, you should try this, you might like it. And then people were hooked onto it. And now, you'll have everybody coming in for lengua, we tried cabeza one time with the beef's head, and everything was getting popular.
Oh, that's excellent. Ruben, you've told me before that your mom, Lucia Martinez, right?
Yeah.
She was really the inspiration for a lot of the food that you're cooking at El Pueblo. Can you tell us a little about her and her special touch as a chef? I mean, what are the things that she taught you? Is she famous for anything in particular?
I know growing up, she would always cook for basically just us on her way to work. She would always leave a pot on the stove of something she'd cook up just for us to have something instead of going out and running around getting pizza or burgers. So she'd always leave salsa verde with pork ribs or something. And then we just kind of tweak it around. We add some rice. We make our own meals out of what she cooked for us. And then she was always really popular. A lot of people would love her tamales. So sometimes in the wintertime when we didn't have a lot of work, we just, take one day and just make 500 tamales. And then just call her family members, her friends, and sell them $1 a piece. So a day we sold 400, 500 tamales, money left over.
That's amazing. I'm especially fond of your family's chorizo recipe, but also the red mole. And I'm wondering, can you tell us a little bit about how those flavors relate to your family's, original home of origin in Oaxaca?
Yeah, Oaxaca, it's more of the dry peppers, homemade meats, chorizo, you have the carne enchilada, which is the spicy pork. But over there, they concentrate more on the mole rojo for the tamales, dry peppers. Anything more dry peppers is more popular in Oaxaca, where we're from. So it's she kind of brought what she learned from her grandma. She brought over, and then she just always made at home, even if it was small amounts of chorizo. She's always made at home, fresh. You know, she get it from the stores, but half the time we get home, she would just say, "Oh, I made chorizo today."
Oh my gosh, it's so good. I remember my first taste of her chorizo on some sopes at your
Yeah.
original El Pueblo, and you can just taste it. You can taste when there's a homemade touch
Yes.
behind there. One of the things that's sort of interesting is if Philadelphia's had a great growth of Mexican restaurants
Yeah.
over the past 25 years. Most of those folks are coming from the state of Puebla. So if we have a lot of mole poblano in Philadelphia, we have some really great mole poblano with darker sort of brown, almost there's some chocolate notes in that.
Mhm.
The moles from Oaxaca are quite different, aren't they?
Tons of them. There's so many now. Then even like there's a lot of companies like where we're from, our town. There's a family that just made their own company of the mole negro.
Oh,
So you can get it shipped out to. They put up on Facebook. They got some shipped out to Paris. That's
oh
how.
wow.
Yeah. So like their mole, it's like such a different variety of it anywhere.
It's amazing how well some of the elemental ingredients of this traditional cuisine travel pretty well. I've talked to a lot of Mexican restaurateurs who actually get ingredients from their family members in Mexico.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the
Some
mole,
right
they can
on their
bring it
porches,
into
in Oaxaca. So many people now I think are just now starting to see a lot of new restaurants owned by families of Mexican origin cooking traditional Mexican food at the shore. This is a story that I wrote a few weeks ago, sort of rounded up at least half a dozen of these really excellent restaurants. And I want to talk about the overall growth of this community at the moment. But I'd like to first focus on your family's journey.
Yeah.
You and your parents and your sibling have been essential parts of the Cape May dining scene for many years, long before you opened El Pueblo. Can you talk about where you worked as a kid, where your parents worked, how hard you worked as a family to sort of get where you are? And a lot of people may know the restaurant that you spent a lot of time at. It was called Henry's on the Beach in Cape May?
Yeah, me, my brother, my father, and a couple of uncles. They started at Henry's on the Beach. I was like 14. I started bussing there.
What year was this?
I was probably I was 14, so a couple years. So a while ago. So it was I started bussing there, and then I hated it. I hated being in the front. So they
You
sent
gotta
me.
start at the bottom, right?
Yeah, so they sent me to the kitchen. Then little by little, I learned. I was doing breakfast, lunch. Then I just got stuck there with it was just a big family in the kitchen. We all just stuck together, helped each other out, and then we were, cooking open morning to night every single day, summer, and then just.
Oh, but you were doing incredible volume, and you weren't cooking Mexican food.
Nah, we were cooking, tradition like American food, a lot of breakfast, lunch, dinner. So it was just constant, busy all single day, every
You
single
told
day.
me once how many meals a day would you serve at Henry's on the Beach?
Breakfast we do probably like close like 600, 800.
Oh my God.
Lunch, same thing. Dinner time, we were closed from like I think 3 to 5. By 4 o'clock, we have a line out the door already waiting for us to open at 5. We get a little like 10-minute break, and here we go again.
Right. We write a lot about immigrant families, showing up and sort of starting at the bottom and working their way up. How hard was it at where you are in Cape May?
It was
and sort of work your way up. What were the challenges that you guys had to overcome to sort of?
Our biggest thing is my mom always taught us, work first, play later. That was her big thing. Like, she always made us, even at 14, 13, she started working at Carney's. It's a local spot on the beach. And she was prepping. And then for us not to be at home, we would go over and just help her. So me and my brother would just stand around, making meatballs, making burgers, prepping them for the cooks. And then little by little, they start paying us. And then we just stuck being in the kitchen, little by little. We started being dishwashers. Then next we started becoming prep cooks and cooks. Then that's what our mom just taught us, just to work, put a couple hours in.
Yeah, and it's amazing now that you have these 2 restaurants, really 3 restaurants if we count your brother's snack shop, which is right next to El Pueblo in North Cape May. Antojitos. It's great for some chamoyadas and churros and other snacks.
Yes.
And you told me that now that you open these restaurants so that your mom could chill out and relax a little bit, but
no, it's the complete opposite now.
She just wants to work with you guys.
Yeah, she loves it. She works there during the day. She preps all the meats, all the rice, and all that. And then afternoon, she comes home with my kids, and then that's another job in itself, right there. But she enjoys it. She's always
Yeah.
there.
How rewarding is it to see, your family's recipes and food, now that you've sort of left the pancake and chicken finger
Yeah.
factory, Henry's behind, and you're cooking the food that you love and that you grew up with. How rewarding is that to sort of see that be embraced?
It's awesome. It's just like our thing was like we were more humble at the beginning. And then now that we see we see the same person come in 3-4 times a week, we're like, man, our food is that good. So we stay humble where
it is that good, Ruben.
yeah, thank you. We stay humble where we've done this for so long that we just get so used to just working, half the time we forget that it's even our restaurant. I'm driving to KMA. I keep thinking I'm going to my afternoon job, but I'm really going to my restaurant.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's awesome. It's the best feeling when you see, friends of yours from growing up, friends that moved out of state, they come back and the first thing they do, they come to your restaurant to say hi and to eat.
I'm very curious. So now you have these two restaurants. One's in North Cape May, and I sort of see that. It's on the way to the ferry. So if you're going to the Lewis ferry down there, that's you take a right turn before you get to the ferry, and you can get some really great tacos before you get on the boat.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But I perceive that as definitely more of a local crowd. North Cape May.
Yeah, North Cape May, we do get a lot of locals, but summertime does get crazy. We do get a lot of people that seen your articles, a lot of people from Philly, a lot of people from New York that they just look us up on Google, and it could be packed outside and people wait an hour and a half, hour 45 minutes. They're happy to wait.
Oh wow.
They'll order and then they'll come back, we'll take their phone numbers and we'll call them when their food's ready. And
oh wow.
Awesome,
Ruben, have you discerned a difference though between what people order at North Cape May and on the boardwalk? Is your audience primarily more Mexican, origin in one restaurant or the other, and are they ordering different things?
Yeah, North Cape May, North Cape May it's more authentic. Everybody, comes for the lengua over there. I think we noticed this summer, which is our first summer in Cape May. It's a lot of people want more like the fish tacos, like the small plates, and then they just get a little bit of small things of everything, and then they just all try it. So I think we're learning from this summer how next year, we might add ceviche, shrimp cocktails, and all that. Try to keep it more closer to the water.
Well, I had your shrimp cocktail on the promenade. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, and that's another plate like a lot of people are scared to try. The shrimp cocktail here is just shrimp with a side of cocktail sauce.
Right.
Yeah, and here in Mexico, we mix everything together, and then you just eat it with a couple saltine crackers or tortilla chips. So, but once people try them, they kind of fall in love with it.
Yeah. Can you speak, Ruben? We've spoken about this, but the wider trend going on, the phenomenon of all these Mexican restaurants just recently sort of popping up on the Jersey Shore. I'm talking from Cape May all the way up to Atlantic City, Manahawkin, and beyond. And is this a case of an immigrant community that's solidly taken root in the region, now spreading its wings as entrepreneurs? And is it also a reflection of American audiences having awoken to and embraced traditional Mexican flavors? Is it a combination of those things? And can you tell me a little bit more about, the growth of the whole community in New Jersey, where you are, and why?
Yeah, I think now, 10 years ago, it was so hard to find a Mexican restaurant here in the South Shore. But now I think it's just kind of popping up everywhere where a lot of immigrant families or Mexican families are just, deciding to do something better for themselves. Like they could see it's a work, even for us, 5 years ago, we didn't think it was going to work. We always had a plan B, which was always going back to work. But then I think even landscaping, construction, a lot of Mexicans are just like, hey, let's try it. What's the worst that could happen? Just go back to work again. And then I think it's a lot of more communities now that a lot of families are actually staying here and living for 10, 20 years now, where their kids go off to college, live here in high school for the rest of to do all their education here. But I think we're all just staying here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's wonderful, and we've all benefited from this. And like I said, your restaurant's a year-round restaurant, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's not. Did you have problems? I mean, everybody had difficulties during the pandemic.
Mhm.
How did you guys navigate that?
Yeah, well, I know when it first started.
We're still in it, by the way. So,
Yeah, no, yeah. When it started first
mask.
coming up on the news, we did get a little scared because of our kids. So we decided to close the first week to see how it went. But then, like 3-4 days later, we were stuck at home doing nothing. We're like, we can't be here we don't know how long we're going to be here. So we were like, let's open up. Let's just do takeout. Just everything we've been doing the whole time. Our takeout, it's a lot crazier than the people coming in to eat. So we just started getting busier and busier every single day. And through the pandemic, we made it. We were just doing family meals. We were doing a little bit of catering for big families, and we just stuck working. We opened 5 days, and just we're busier than ever.
Yeah, you clearly get around to other Mexican restaurants at the Jersey Shore too, because you were the one who told me about another new favorite of mine, El Tacuate in
Yeah.
Atlantic City. What do you look for? And I have a follow-up question on this, but what do you look for when you go to another Mexican restaurant that tells you these folks are doing it right, or the way that really appeals to you?
Yeah, same thing with us. I always look for the homemade tortillas. That's my thing. I always tell my wife and my mom, I was like, I like my tacos like scorching hot. So like even when I'm at my restaurant, we don't eat at our restaurants basically. Wait till I get home, and I like my meals hot, like real hot. So like I like my tortillas like burning my fingers. So like I always go to a place where I see like they make homemade tortillas. It's the biggest thing for me.
Well, the thing about El Tacuate, which was so interesting, and I've never seen it anywhere else, they have a comal made of earthenware.
Yeah.
Meaning the griddle, for people who don't know, that would be like the griddle or the plancha.
Yeah.
You would normally cook your tortillas on metal, but theirs is on earthenware. Does that make a big difference?
It does gives it a little bit of flavor. Like you can see a little more earthy flavor to it. It does switch up. You can make a lot more things in it, like even like the sopes. They call them picaditas. It's similar to the sopa, it's just not deep fried.
Yeah.
And then they put like
one of the other things, I have a question from our audience here. Angelica is asking a question. What do you think about the birria craze? And there was another restaurant that I wrote about this summer, Taqueria Rendon in Northfield. I thought he was doing a really great job with birria. Yeah. You guys aren't doing birria, are you?
A lot of people always ask us all this summer. We do have a fairly small kitchen for us to like do big pots of that. But I know we actually did enlarge our kitchen this summer. So this fall, we actually want to try it. But I was at the position where I want to try something different, do a homemade, like the birria, like the actual meat, like we're more barbacoa. So like the shredded goat and all that. But we take the broth and we turn it into a soup, like a pozole.
Yeah. Oh, I love pozole so much.
So the leftover pieces of the meat, we throw it in the pozole and make a different stock out of it, which is a little thicker than the birria stock. So we want to try something like that, but we're waiting for the fall season to try things like that I think they'll be an awesome hit.
You guys are busy enough without lines.
Yeah, and that was another big thing.
For your birria. So what is the future? We're almost done, Ruben, but I want to ask you, what does the future hold for you and your family and your restaurants?
I know. We want to try new things. I know a lot of people have been asking us for breakfast. Mexico is a big breakfast thing. They do breakfast, they'll skip lunch, and then they'll have dinner. So we want to try something for breakfast. I know I've been dreaming of a food truck, try something different. But I know right now my mom's a little mad at us because we're thinking of too many businesses. And she's like, yeah.
Well, Ruben, it has been such a delight to speak with you again and to see you. Thanks for taking time away from your very busy restaurant to talk to us. Everybody should go check out El Pueblo in North Cape May and El Pueblo 2 or El Pueblo Dos on the promenade in Cape May. Is the Cape May one open year round, Ruben, or just Cape May?
First year you're trying it out, see what happens. It's a little different right now with such low workers coming in. So we've been kind of struggling a little bit in Cape May we've been keeping 5-6 days open there, but North Cape May is always crazy enough. So
awesome. Well, listen, I wish you the best of luck for the rest of 2021, and I can't wait until next summer when I can get another taste of El Pueblo and Cape May.
Be there.
Be well.
Thank you. You too.
Have a great day, Ruben. Now, Next up, I'd like to welcome Lisa Calvo and Melissa McGrath of Sweet Amalia Oyster Market and Kitchen. Hello. I just want to tell you both that your restaurant was one of the most delightful surprises of the summer to me. It's technically not at the shore. I know you've been lumped into everybody's shore coverage, including mine, but you're halfway there. And I have a whole repertoire of restaurants I like to stop that are sort of halfway to the shore. And you are now have the distinction of being a restaurant that I don't even think of as halfway to the shore. It's within my reach to go anytime at all from Philadelphia, because what you do is unique. You're a market. You're an oyster bar. You're a sandwich heaven. Tell me, how did you find each other, and how did this project come together? First, tell us what it is, since I'm failing for words at the moment. What is Sweet Amalia Market and Kitchen?
It is a restaurant, a retail space, and a produce market, kind of all in one, that sources, all of the great local produce from Jersey and outside of Pennsylvania. We also sell Lisa's oysters here and some other great varieties from Barnegat Bay here. So it's definitely a lot of different things in one.
I mean, even I could just go and shop at your market. You have wonderful taste in products, just like dry goods and sauces, things that people from Philadelphia will recognize a lot of these artisan names together. But I'm really curious about how you two found each other. And Lisa, you're an oyster farmer. Melissa, you're a chef. Is farmer the right word, by the way? Should I be calling you a farmer, or what do I call you?
I think that's great. Yes. Farmer, grower.
Grower.
So, with my farm, we've always done a direct delivery model. So I interface directly with chefs. And early on, we started with a few restaurants down the shore, and really a focus in Center City, Philadelphia.
Yes.
So Melissa and I think, met one of the second year that we were selling oysters in the city. And it was really a, chef-purveyor relationship that turned into a friendship.
That's interesting. Yeah, so friendship is one thing, but then I'm just curious, like, how did this place happen?
Yeah, so I had gotten back last summer from San Francisco helping some former colleagues of mine open a restaurant. And when I came back, I was really kind of in between jobs and figuring out what was next during COVID. And so I just reached out to Lisa to see if she needed any help on the farm. And so I went down and helped on the farm, a couple times a week. And she kind of introduced me to where the market is, where she has been washing and sorting oysters for years now before they head out to restaurants in Philly or Cape May. It just happens to have a full kitchen. So she's like, why don't you come take a look? And yeah, here we are now. So
like I said, that's very unusual. I mean, it's a very unusual setup, because, it looks like your standard New Jersey, produce road stand. And I stop at them all because I always love to buy the tomatoes and the corn and the blueberries, on the way back from the shore. And you think, if you say oyster bar in New Jersey, you think, oh, well, this really belongs on the water, right? And that's where you'd expect it to. And yet, I love how you've incorporated the bounty of New Jersey produce into this concept, onto the menu, because you're smack right in the middle of all this New Jersey farmland where you are. So it's really like, New Jersey's sort of narrow, so it's not really far from either. But you're actually really you're well suited to do these things that you're doing and cook all this stuff together.
Right, Craig, it really wasn't a grand plan at all for Sweet Amalia Oyster Farm to go into the restaurant business. It really was sort of like one positive thing that happened out of this very challenging pandemic year. And I had been packing for distribution at this site, which is located in my hometown. So it made sense because it was close to home and it was halfway between the farm and Philadelphia. And then the building came for sale, and our business partner, Ed Pappas, helped us acquire the building right before the pandemic hit. So it was sort of like we had this building. the plan was just to continue packing and eventually find someone to come in and run a farm market or something. And then when Melissa came on the scene, it just kind of all fell together. So,
yeah. For people who've never been, can you tell us, Melissa, what will they find on the menu at Sweet Amalia Market? I could tell them, they could read my review, but I'm so excited to hear it from you.
Sure. Obviously, we sell Lisa's oysters, raw and baked in a few different variations. We do fried oysters, an oyster roll. We always have Barnegat oysters here that we shuck as well, that we rotate every week. We try to do a different Jersey oyster. And then we have a few different other seafood rolls, and then about 5 or 6 hoagies or sandwiches. Yeah.
Well, I love oysters so much, and I love that you do kind of do them in almost all their ways. Like raw. You gotta have. I actually ate them every step of the way when I was there raw. I love baked oysters because I spent a lot of time in New Orleans, where that's a true art. And what did you put on top of your baked oysters? They're like garlicky and crispy and buttery, but not overcooked either. So what's on top of those?
Yeah, so we make a puree with cream and garlic, lots of lemon zest, Calabrian chili, and then we cook down whatever seasonal green is around. Right now it's spinach from Jamie Greif, who's right behind us. His farm is right behind us. And then I just top it with breadcrumbs and some Parmesan cheese. And yeah, just lots of lemon and garlic. It's
so simple.
A variation of a Rockefeller, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. And is it really the beauty of oysters is that they're delicious with nothing on them at all, practically. Eat them raw. And I wonder, is it hard to shuck an oyster? Because a lot of people, I think, are very intimidated by oysters, and they probably don't eat them at home because they're just afraid to. I had a note here from Renee from Brooklyn. She says, "How do I shuck an oyster without stabbing myself?" So yeah, I think you're probably the experts to sort of. Can you give us a lesson on how to shuck an oyster?
Yeah, absolutely. You go for it, Lisa.
Okay.
Lisa's the pro.
Sure,
I mean, we're both pros, but
I'll do it. It's not that hard. It does take a little practice, but really, it's once you get the hang of it, it's a breeze. So oysters have 2 shells, right? And one is cupped and one is flat. So if you hold the flat shell up, you know that the muscle that holds the shells together is right at about 2 o'clock. So that's where you want to be able to sever the muscle from the shell. So what I usually do, if I have a towel, I'll roll it up and tuck the oyster into the towel pretty securely, somewhat protecting your hand. Then you have your shucking knife, which is a special knife. It's not a paring knife. Don't try that. It has a very strong blade. So what you want to do is just wedge the knife into the hinge of the oyster. And it's really about finding a secure, strong spot and then twisting your wrist. So you want to just do that until the shell pops. And you'll hear it pop ever so slightly. And then from there, it's just a patient move of wiggling the knife around the edge of the shell so you can get to that muscle, and then scraping the muscle off the top valve, the flat valve. And then you have your oyster meat, and it's still attached to the bottom valve, so you want to just slice that off. And there you have it.
Oh my God, that is so beautiful, Lisa. You made it look so easy. And you didn't even have to don one of those chainmail, gauntlets to people wearing. That's just for show, I guess. So Lisa, what would you put on top of it? Just a little mignonette or a squirt of lemon or nothing at all?
So if I'm trying a new variety of oysters, I'll usually get 3. So the first one I would do just kind of with nothing. So you get the pure essence of the oyster. The second one, I would do a little splash of lemon because that's sort of like a consistent ingredient you can always use. And then the third one, I really love a classic mignonette. which Melissa does a fantastic, very.
What is a mignonette? That's something people maybe have heard of, but they don't know what it is.
Sure. Mignonette is just a really traditional condiment that people enjoy with oysters, and it usually consists of vinegar and shallots are the two main components, and then you can really add anything from that point on. Here we do our house mignonette. We do a little bit of honey, shallots, salts, and then we steep rice wine vinegar and apple cider vinegar overnight with rosemary, thyme, and bay leaf, which I think all those kind of heartier herbs play really well with Lisa's oysters.
Oh, that sounds great.
I mean, you can really do anything. It's a great vessel for any kind of vegetable scraps you have lying around. Cilantro stems work really well in mignonettes. Anything that offers a really nice texture, like the shallots provide a nice crunch and texture. Celery would do that. So yeah.
Well, Lisa, I wanted to go back for a minute to you were talking about when you're tasting a new oyster and you're sort of tasting in these different toppings. How does somebody tell the difference between a good oyster and a bad oyster, or a good oyster from one region or a good oyster from another region? What are you looking for? What is the vocabulary that you need to start tasting oysters like a pro?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if there's necessarily good and bad. It's sort of more about a preference. And the word we were using these days is miroir. There probably isn't any food that takes on the flavor of place more than an oyster. So depending on where the oyster is grown, it might be in a coastal ocean bay, so it's going to be very salty, very briny, or it could be in an upper tributary where it would be milder and sweeter in flavor. So I think it's really fun to try different oysters. And then there are also different species of oysters. So if you're on the West Coast, they would be growing entirely different species than the Eastern oyster, which is common along the East Coast of the U.S.
I'm partial to the Eastern oysters myself.
I am too. Likewise.
They always describe the West Coast oysters as buttery and cucumber notes, but I like that brine. I like that briny smack. It's one of the interesting things. Lisa, you've been one of the pioneers in sort of helping get the New Jersey oyster industry back on its feet. Can you tell us a little bit about? How do you grow an oyster? What is the history, if you can sum it up? There's a lot of history in New Jersey with oysters, but it was dormant for a long time. Places like Cape May Salt, I know, was one of the earliest pioneers in sort of reviving the agriculture of oysters, the cultivation of oysters. How do you do that? How do you make an oyster? So
I should say up front that really we here in New Jersey, we still have an oyster fishery where there are fishermen that go out and catch wild oysters. So that's very active, sustainable, produced fishery. More contemporary is the farmed oyster, which you're alluding to with the start of the Cape May Salt Farm. And the way we grow oysters is very site specific. So it might be.
What year? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what year are we talking? When did the cultivation of oysters begin in New Jersey?
The Cape May Salt Farm was started in the late 1990s.
Yeah, got it.
So, and that was really, it was in the mid-90s that oyster farming really took off as an industry along the East Coast of the United States. And that was partly as a consequence of some advances in breeding, which produced a parent oyster that would grow well in our waters. So regardless of where you are, you're typically holding the oyster in some kind of container or basket. It can be an on-bottom cage or basket or a floating cage. Or in our case, we use a method called rack and bag cultivation, which if you've ever seen those pictures from France and Ireland where there are extensive acres of racks with oysters growing on them, it's a similar method to that. So the oysters are up off the bottom. We secure grow out bags to the racks. And then we'll purchase the seed at a hatchery. So when I buy seed, I'm buying
How big are
at
they? Tiny.
millimeters, which is less than, a 1/10 of an inch.
Oh my gosh.
They are not really discernible as little oysters. When you get them, they look like grains of sand. So it's kind of a tedious process. It can take 2 years or 3 years to grow an oyster from seed to market size. And during that time, there's a lot of handling, keeping the stock at optimal densities, and cleaning the oysters.
You know, I'll never forget, you were so kind to let me come visit you at your farm a couple summers ago. And we waded into the Delaware Bay out, among the racks, and you took an oyster out and you cracked it open. And there's nothing like eating an oyster while you're wearing, hip boots, in the water. And it was just so wonderful. And, sweet Amalias have become, I think, one of the real standards of our region of great oysters. On the milder side, I think, as a profile, is that correct? A little bit, they're sort of tender and buttery, and on the milder side, very versatile, really wonderful for cooking. Actually, I think they make good cooking oysters. But also, in more recent years, as you noted, oystering is now happening in Barnegat, near Barnegat Light. And you mentioned this word merroir, which is sort of like the sea twist on terroir, which is that things sort of taste of the place that they come from. Those oysters taste really different, don't they, from the northern waters of New Jersey? Can you give us a little geography lesson on how these oysters might taste different? And I know you sell some at the market.
Do you want to do it?
Get a pro on that.
So it's not so much northern versus southern. It's really about the proximity to the ocean.
Right.
So in those Atlantic coastal bays that lie just behind the barrier islands, Long Beach Island, Barnegat Light, even down into Sea Isle now, there are farms popping up in those back coastal bays. It's much closer to the ocean, so the water has a lot more salt in it. And that is the strongest influence that differentiates the flavor from, say, my sweet Amalia oyster, which is grown in the Delaware Bay about 8 miles from the ocean. There's still a significant tidal influence of Atlantic Ocean waters coming into the bay at high tide and flushing the area where I'm at. But those coastal bays really have that really bright, strong brine flavor. Yeah.
Well, I knew that the oysters were going to be fantastic at your market and kitchen, but what surprised me, and not for any good reason, is how wonderful Chef Melissa is, and I just had a real chance to explore her food a lot more and sort of acknowledge it, I think, than in the past. Melissa, you worked in Philadelphia at a bunch of restaurants. Can you tell us a little bit about your background? And the other thing, I really want to get into the other things that are cooked at the market. But tell us a little bit. Where are you from originally?
Sure. I am from Philadelphia originally. I grew up in the Northeast, but I did move to San Francisco when I was 18, and I stayed out there for 12 years. So I cooked in San Francisco for a long time, and I moved back to Philadelphia in 2016, worked for Ellen Yin for a little while, and then I went on to work at Pub and Kitchen and the Diving Horse with that crew for 3 or 4 years. Yeah.
Everybody thinks of San Francisco as this culinary paradise. You stayed there a long time. What brought you back?
My family. I didn't want to live 3,000 miles away from my family anymore, but yes, San Francisco is definitely the culinary paradise that everyone says it is.
Yeah. One of the things, and I say something surprised me at the market, it was the sort of the focus of the menu has this sandwich focus, which I thought it makes sense, because if you go to the Sweet Amalia Market and Kitchen, it's like, roll up garage door, side of the roadside stand. You get your food to go, and you eat at picnic tables on the lawn down the way. So it's casual in the way it's presented. But these sandwiches were really great. I mean, you had the seafood-based sandwiches, the fried oyster. When I was in New Orleans, we call that an oyster loaf. You stuff some French bread with fried oysters, and it's really great. And then your clam roll is really great. Those are Jersey clam strips in a roll. You make them all very interesting. And I also had a tempura soft shell crab sandwich. But then you do these hoagies and this roast pork sandwich, and this is like I was there the first time. I was like, I get hoagies back in Philly. I don't really, roast pork. I'll get that back home. And then I talked to you, and I started to regret it. So then I went back another time, and I ate your hoagies, and I thought it was really one of the best I've had around here. And I want you to talk a little bit about the art of the sandwich. And I know that's something you became known for a little bit in San Francisco too. Is the sandwich an underrated art form of cooking? And how do you approach it?
I approached the hoagies the same way I would approach anything else that I was cooking, finding that balance of spice and, like the fattiness of whatever is on the sandwich, texture coming from other things that is not just like a seeded Sarcone's hoagie roll. Yeah, it's all just about balances of flavor and, high acidity and just like anything else you would cook.
Well, why don't you break down two of your favorite sandwiches here for us? Tell us about your favorite seafood sandwich, and then tell us about your hoagie.
Okay, so my favorite seafood sandwich is the clam roll. I really, really love clam strips. If I'm going out to eat at any kind of seafood establishment, I'm ordering a clam strip platter with cocktail sauce. So that sandwich is a little bit of a play on that. I do like to take classics and tweak them and, add my what I've touched to it. So the clam roll still has the horseradish and the lemon that you would find in cocktail sauce, but it's just in a different, like aioli-based sauce with dill and horseradish. And then I guess the roast pork is my favorite hoagie. And yeah, I take heritage pork shoulders and, we salt them 2 days in advance. I make a roasted garlic puree and we marinate them in that, and then we braise them off. And we don't cook them all the way through on the first cook. We actually finish cooking them when we make the sandwich, and we drop the pork into the braising liquid. And then that's served with broccoli rabe. I make a cherry pepper aioli, which is literally just aioli and the cherry peppers you find at any sandwich shop in Philadelphia that are just pureed into it. And I really love that flavor profile. I love cherry peppers.
Isn't there one more thing? You do something very funky with the cheese that I'm really kind of into.
Yeah, there's 3 different cheeses on the pork. It's just, a really mild mozzarella. And then we take sharp provolone and grate it, and we bake it really low and slow. And it kind of turns into this like crunchy cheese cracker that I feel like provides a lot of texture and umami flavor to that sandwich as well.
I need more cheese crackers in my daily life. I'm gonna be back. I'm gonna be back really soon.
Really Parmesan, provolone. Yeah, it's delicious.
You call that a frico? That's what some people call that, right?
Yeah, frico.
Frico. So, and we're just about done here, but I've gotten a question from somebody who named Molly, who really loves your place. And she's asking Lisa and Melissa, are you guys going to do any farm visit offerings anytime soon? Which reminds me, we talked about this seems like the beginning of something. Obviously, it's this unique bundle of ingredients and energy going on, and you're really well located. Do you see Sweet Amalia's Market and Kitchen evolving into a more of a restaurant or a special event kind of place, a sit-down place, indoor dining, when we can someday get back to that, I hope? What are your plans for the future of growing this really special place?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. I think this is the beginning stages of whatever this is going to evolve into. But looking forward, I think post Labor Day, we're gonna see how busy we remain after the shore traffic dies down. We definitely want to do farm to table dinners here with different chefs from Philadelphia. We want to organize some farm trips down on the farm when we can bring food down or have a group come back to the market and have dinner. In terms of it being like a full eat-in restaurant, I guess we'll just have to wait and see, what happens with all the COVID stuff and everything. But I mean, Lisa, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think the name of the game right now is we want to continue to evolve and continue to grow and see where the path takes us. I think we're open to see what our customers are looking for and what the landscape of COVID allows us to do, and how we can staff up and move forward. We really, I feel like as a central theme, we're really celebrating local. There's such great purveyors in and around Philadelphia, the local farms, and just bringing all those foodways together and being a place where we can sort of build community around that and really just enjoy it. It's been so fun. It's been such a great partnership with Melissa and Ed Pappas, and it's exciting and fun, and so many ideas. So we'll see where we can go with them.
Well, if I have anything to do about this, I'm going to keep sending people to Newfield. I couldn't even put it on a map, but it's a cool road. It's a cool country road, and if you keep going, there's some great barbecue places down the street, and you keep on going. I love exploring, the back roads of New Jersey that were forgotten, once the Atlantic City Expressway got built. So many good things. It's been such a great time having you both. I want to thank you, Lisa and Melissa, for joining me. I also really want to thank Ruben for joining us earlier. I want to thank everybody who's listening in, spend a little time to sort of hear about some of the great flavors of food going down the Jersey Shore. Summer is almost done, but these flavors are going to stay with us, and we're going to be able to sort of keep exploring them in the off season. So I want to thank you all for coming, and that's it for today. I hope to see you again soon.
Thanks for having us,
Craig.
Craig.
Thank you so much.